What now?
Go.
Yeah. Talk now.
Yeah, no.
Hello everybody, and welcome to this next video that I've put together. I said I was going to do a series about the Karmann gear, but I also had a few things I needed to fix on my Red 64. So I put this series of videos together. I hope they make sense. They were kind of made at different times, and I'll try and put them together so they actually form some kind of sequence. But I basically changed the location of the fuel filter to underneath the bonnet, but then I had some misfiring problems, so I then relocated it again with another filter, and then I did a bit of diagnostics to try and find out where this backfire was coming from. So yeah, it's not the series of the Karmann gear like I said, but I'd like to include some of this other stuff because it might help some of you out there. So I hope you enjoy it, and yeah, here it is. Thanks for watching. So I'm just relocating the fuel filter from here. I had it here for when the engine was first rebuilt, just so I could check that there was fuel coming in, the pump was working, etc., and to see how much dirt was in the fuel tank. So I've decided to put it underneath the tank. So it's going to go on here. I'm not sure if you can see that in this light. So I'm just going to cut that pipe, put an inline filter in, and then put it all back together. Okay, so I'm just going to use one of these hose clamps to stop any fuel that might be left in the tank leaking out. I have the fuel filter here, and you always have to check because there is a flow arrow. There it is. So you always check. I don't know if you can see that arrow there. So the fuel goes that way, obviously. And then I have these handy cutters. They're actually for plastic pipe, but they work really great with the hoses. And then just a couple of extra clamps and a driver for these. So let's go ahead and cut it. You can see better there. Okay, so you can see with the tank out of the car, I've just used this clamp to stop the any fuel coming out, and then I've just clamped the new filter on with the arrow pointing that way. So I'll just put it back, connect it up, put the fuel back in, and hopefully it doesn't leak. While the tank was out, I just scuffed up the area where the fuel had like dissolved the paint off. So I just quickly gave it a touch up with the rattle can, and I will, once it's dry, I'll rub over it with a bit of fine paper or something just to take the shine off, because it doesn't really match the rest of the car, because the rest of the car is kind of dull. So yeah. Okay, after putting the filter under the tank, I took it for a test drive yesterday because the weather wasn't too bad and the roads were clear. But it ran okay for a bit, but it did seem like it lacked a little bit of power. So I brought it back here. I checked that there was no leaks or anything like that, and it looked all fine. I thought I'd take it out for one more test drive before I went home, and it started popping and banging and everything like that. So it seems, well, the only thing that I've changed is the spark plugs, the oil, and the location of the filter. So I think that it might be fuel starvation. So I don't like the filter being under there, and I don't particularly like the pipe. So I have a feeling it might be kinking or something like that. So I'm now removing the fuel again. I've just got this battery connected to the electric pump, and I'm going to drain the fuel tank again, remove the filter, take it for another test drive without a filter, see if that solves the problem. If it does, I know it's definitely that was a problem, but I decided to use this. I had this in my collection, so I need to get a new filter for it because it's been used and it's quite dirty. But yeah, I've decided I'm going to mount this. Probably I'll maybe make a bracket for it, but Well, I can't fit it. But I'll probably mount it somewhere like that, and then at least I can see like if there's much dirt in the fuel, if I have fuel come into the engine, and I quite like the idea of having it here, so that's what I'm going to do. Okay, I'll continue draining the tank. Just this little electric fuel pump. It should be, this is a 20 litre tank, and last time I think there was just under 20 litres, so this should be enough. Okay, so I'm just going to replace this filter with just a piece of hose. You want to make sure that it's not too long that it can catch on something, but obviously not too short, because when you do want to remove, or if you need to remove the tank, if it's too short, then you have a hell of a job trying to fight getting the tank out, getting your hands in there and everything. So let's see if this is too long, then I'll just trim it down a little bit, but let's give it a go. Okay, I just put the pipe on. I haven't tightened it up, but I just loosely put the tank in there, and I'm going to check to see what the pipe looks like, if it's catching on anything, or I'm not even sure you can really see much. Oh, it's quite long actually, so I think I'm going to maybe shorten it a little bit, because that's quite long, as you can see. Okay. Yeah, I'll shorten it a little bit. That's quite a loop. You just need to make sure it doesn't catch on the steering arms, or rub on anything, or vibrate and rub against anything. So I'm just going to shorten that a little bit, and that'll be fine. Okay, I just shortened that a little bit, probably, where is it? Just about this much. I think that's going to be fine, as long as there's enough so I can lift the tank out on the side like this and get to everything. And you can see this is the new fuel line that I ran front to back at the hard line. The original one is actually here, that goes through the tunnel, but I didn't fancy using that because you don't know how corroded it is, and if it does spring a leak, the fuel actually leaks inside the tunnel, so that's not too good. So I decided to run a new line, which I can show you. I ran it actually, through, hold on, get the light, can't see much without the light. So I ran it through there and underneath the box, pedal box. I actually ground a little bit off just to make a little bit more clearance, so if there's any flex in the pedals when you're using them, then it doesn't squash this fuel line, but it runs all the way front to back. And I made these little clips to hold it in place, so it sits just above the fuel tank, and then it heads out just below, like where the brake line goes. So, and then all the way, hard line all the way underneath the luggage tray, and then into the engine compartment. But I think I'm going to cut that back now, this hard line, to the other side of the firewall, and then run the rubber hose up to the new filter up there. But for now I'm going to put the fuel back in without a filter, run the engine, see if it's solved the backfiring problem, and then if it is, I know it was the filter or the kink in the hose that was causing the problem. So I'll put the fuel back in, or tank back in, button it up, fuel back in, and then I'll start it up. Okay, tank is back in and bolted in. I'll put the fuel back in. I shortened the pipe, so where is it? Yeah, so I think that's a lot better now. There's still plenty there, so it's not like a tight bend, and still enough slack so I can get the tank out. So I'm going to go ahead and start it up and see what it runs like. Okay, let's see if it will start up. I have behind here, there's no rear seats because I have this cage in here, so the battery's here strapped down, and I have this isolation switch for the battery. I also have a relay for easier start. And okay, let's see. So, the light is on. Give it a couple of pumps in neutral. Still popping a bit there, huh? Okay, I don't think you would have caught that on the video, but there's when you rev it up, there's a nasty like pop, and it sounds like it's coming from the carbs. I'm not sure, but as soon as you like put the engine under load, like try to accelerate, it gets a lot worse. So I only reversed it out and then brought it back in again, but when I drove it in, it did pop a little bit under load, so I have to investigate some more. So it wasn't the fuel filter, and I'm not actually that surprised because the angle didn't look that bad in the pipe, but I was kind of hoping that maybe it was, obviously, because it would have been solved, but I have to dig some more. So I don't know if it's fuel or electrical. The only other thing I did do, like I said, was change the plugs. Could be a plug problem. So I have to investigate. Okay. Okay, just an update. I didn't film over the last couple of days on what I was doing, but I shall update you. A bit of troubleshooting. I still don't know if I've made any advancements. I'm going to take it for a test run today, but I will go through the bits and pieces that I did. In the last couple of videos I made, I said that I was going to fit this fuel filter inside next to the engine. So I've done that. I basically made a bracket. I'll show you in a minute. I bolted it to the firewall. I cut back the solid pipe back to just under here, drilled a bigger hole, put a grommet in, and then run a rubber hose from here to the new filter. But yeah, again, it didn't solve this backfiring problem, so I started to investigate a little bit further. I took one plug off at a time, HT lead off of the spark plug each time to see if the problem went away, if it was, to isolate the problem by removing a plug wire. And on the number 4, it seemed to go away, but it was still, I wasn't too sure, but I checked the valve clearances and they were pretty much fine. I took the spark plug out and it was a little bit black, but they're brand new plugs, so I'd only had it on idle a couple of times, so that didn't seem to be the problem. So I started to look into the timing because I didn't really spend much time setting up the 123 ignition distributor. So I thought I would do it properly. And also the pulley, crankcase pulley for the belt, it was an aftermarket one, and the timing marks were not very clear. So I took that off and I measured it against one I actually have for the Karma gear engine, just to see if the marks were in the right place. So I re-marked them. The 01 was pretty much spot on, but it didn't have the 7.5 degree mark on it. So I just, with a hacksaw, marked it, put it back on, then started retuning the distributor going by the instructions. Yeah, but so I did all of that, and I reset the distributor with the timing, etc., which I'll explain how I did. And then I started it last night. It was quite late, and it was running maybe a bit better, but didn't sound perfect. So I was warming it up and revving it from the engine here, and then I went to go around the front to turn it off, and the oil pressure light was on the dashboard, which is really not a good sign. So I turned it off. I made sure everything was free, and I don't know why I lost oil pressure. It could be a faulty switch. There was plenty of oil in it because I'd just done an oil change, so I checked all of that. So I cleaned all my tools away, decided just to call it a night. And just before I left, I thought I'd just start it once because it was really bugging me. And I started it, the oil light was on, and then it went off. So that's where we are. So it's Saturday, midday. I just come into work to start it and yeah, see if the oil pressure light is on or off. But I'll walk around and video the bits that I have done as an update. Okay, let's open this up. Yeah, so I fitted the fuel filter. I still need to get a new filter for it. I actually cleaned up the old one just to have something on there, but it seems to be flowing okay. So I made this little bracket, can't really see much, bolted it to the firewall. There's the pipe that runs, you can't see, but it goes in the corner there out to the solid line. And I'm not sure about this. I might do something better about this because I don't really like it like that, but yep. And then I marked where number 1 is, and then I via the instructions for this, it's quite simple actually. You basically just connect one lead, the red one, to the plus, and then if I can show you here, it's quite tight. There's actually a little light there. You can't really see it on the video, but maybe I can do a demonstration another day. But you basically put it to top dead center on compression stroke on the number 1. So you have to take the spark plug out. I basically put a wrench extension in there, and then turn the engine over by hand. And when the rod, you can hear like the air coming out, so you know it's on a compression stroke. And when the rod is like all the way to the top, you know that the piston is at the top of the cylinder. And I rocked it a little bit just to make sure it was exactly at the top. And then you rotate, you undo this, you loosen this off, you rotate this. If your distributor rotates clockwise, then you rotate the body of the distributor counterclockwise until that light just comes on, and then it tells you to turn it the other way just to take the slack up, and then you lock this up so it doesn't move when you're driving or when it's running. Yeah, and then yesterday I started it up. It seemed okay, but like not perfect, I think. And then the oil light come on, and the oil pressure switch is actually down here. And I can't remember if I put a brand new one on there. I think I did, but that doesn't mean anything. If it's Chinese, then it could be lesser quality and have failed, but I don't know. So yeah, that's what I've been doing. And this is the pulley that I marked. That's the 180. But I can't turn it with one hand. There we go. So you can see, I don't know if you can see actually, but there's the little notch, and there is the 7.5 degree notch, which is exactly TDC on number 1. So yeah, so next thing I'm going to do is start it up and see what happens. I don't think I explained it well enough. What I meant by finding the top dead center on the number 1 cylinder to set the 1, 2, 3 ignition distributor. So what I did is I took the spark plug out of number 1 cylinder, and then this, it's a socket extension, fits just inside the hole which the spark plug fits into. So you put that in, and then I turned the engine over by hand, like by moving the belt, and then you see that it pushes, when the piston comes up, it pushes this out of the hole where the spark plug goes. And to know whether it's on compression stroke is you can hear the air pushing past this when you turn the engine over, so you know it's on compression. So you basically turn the engine over by hand, and when this gets to the top, you can see your timing mark on the pulley, so you know that you're pretty much there. And then I just put my finger on the end of this and rocked the engine, so you can feel just when it gets to exactly to the top, and that's when you know that it's at top dead center on the compression stroke. And then you can set the distributor as described in the instructions. Basically, when the piston is on its compression stroke, it's compressing the air and the fuel mixture, and when it gets to the top of the piston, that's when the spark plug sparks and ignites the mixture, and then it forces the piston back down again, and obviously all 4 cylinders are doing that, and the engine runs. So that's what I meant, and I hope that is clear. These are really handy, these. These are for moving the car around, so you can push it up to the side without using the jack. They basically, you pump them like that and they raise the car up or lower it, and it's on these wheels, so you can just push the car around. Brilliant. Let's open the door and see if it starts. Let's see if it pops and bangs or we have oil pressure. as you can see, the oil pressure light has gone out, but it was on when I first started it, but it really doesn't sound happy. I'm not even sure if it's running on all 4 cylinders because it sounds quite lumpy, but I need to investigate more. Okay, while it was running, the oil pressure light went out, which is good, but it still bothers me why it come on in the first place. And then while it was running, I took each plug lead off the distributor and to check if there was a spark. If you take the plug off, I'll show you in a minute. If you take the plug off, you can see the spark jumping between the lead and the distributor cap. So I know I have spark going to each plug. So I just took it up the road and back, just a really short run, and it's lacking power and it was popping. So when I was taking the leads off, I noticed that I think it was when I took off 1 and 2, the engine note changed quite a lot. So it was running less. But when I took off the 3 and the 4, it didn't make such a big difference. So I'm starting to think that there's probably a problem with the carb on the left-hand side. So I have a feeling that that side is not getting fuel. That's why it's running so rough. So I think that is my next investigation. I think I'm going to take the carb off because it's easier. I might take the filter off first and push the accelerator and see if there's fuel squirting in there, because there could be a blockage in that carburetor. The investigation continues. Okay, let's start it up. Okay. Okay, now I'm a little bit confused because when I took off number 4 and number 2, which are on opposite sides of the engine, the note of the engine changed considerably. But when I took off number 1 and number 3, not so much of a change. They should all be the same, I would think, because the engine needs all 4 spark plugs. So my theory of it being one of the carbs doesn't really make sense. So maybe I'm going to change the spark plugs. They're brand new, but that doesn't mean anything. They could still be faulty even though they're new. So I think I'm going to change the spark plugs first because I have a second new set. So let's try it. Okay, this is what I bought. From what I've read, NGK make really good spark plugs, and apparently the Bosch ones are not so good quality as they used to be. So that's the reason I bought NGK. But we shall see. I'll take the other 4 out, or the new 4 out, and see what they look like. Okay, so I've just got a socket on here. I've taken the HT lead off. Got a socket on there. I'm just winding out. They should spin really nice and freely, you know, and you should never tighten them too much, because the spark plug is steel and the heads are made from aluminium, and of course aluminium is really soft, so be really careful when you're tightening them up, because you're using quite a big wrench on it, and you don't need to put too much pressure on, so you always have to be really careful with that. Okay, I'll get this out and see what it looks like. When you're running twin carbs like this, the spark plugs 1 and 3 are quite difficult to get to, because they're obviously on the other side of the carb. So I'm just going to remove the air cleaners so I can just squeeze my hand down here and get to them. So let's do that. It's always good practice to put something to block the carb, just to make sure nothing falls in there, and make sure what you're putting in there is clean as well and hasn't got lots of dust or bits of dirt that could harm the engine. So I just put a glove in there. Okay, so I've removed all 4 spark plugs. They're quite black and sooted up, as you can see, but all 4 look pretty much the same. Maybe that one's a little bit lighter, but nothing too drastic, you know. Because the car hasn't really done any long runs and it's been idling, they tend to soot up more, because they're not running at optimal temperature, and they actually, when they warm up and you go on a longer drive, they actually clean up a little bit. So yeah, nothing shouts out, you know. I was kind of hoping there might be some sign that it could be an ignition lead or something like that, but not really. So I think I'll still put the new ones in, because I've taken these out, and they're only €4 each. So I'm going to put the new ones in, and if it doesn't solve the problem, then I can always clean these up a little bit and keep them as spares if I need them. Okay, if we look inside the carb, maybe if I push down the accelerator, maybe we can see if there's any fuel that squirts out. Yeah, I'm not sure if you can see it on the camera. There you go. Okay, let's check the other side. Let's take the glove out. It looks wet there, look. So I have a feeling that this is okay. Yeah, so you can see that squirting. Okay, so there's the carbs are squirting fuel. I've set the ignition. I'm going to change the spark plugs. The only other thing could be the ignition leads. I mean, these are brand new as well, but again, that doesn't mean anything with some of the quality of the parts. But I did order the better quality ones, but again, that's no guarantee. So it's kind of weird that this car was running really well for 600 kilometers, and then after I've serviced it, something's... Well, it drove. The first time I drove it after the service and everything, it was actually okay. And then all of a sudden it started popping. So yeah, all I can do is keep investigating. So I'm going to put the new plugs in and see if that makes any difference. Okay, let's put the new plugs in. This was a tip given to me years ago. I don't even remember who it was, but and I'm not sure if this is good advice or not. Maybe someone can tell me. But I was told to put a tiny bit of this copper paste on the threads for the spark plugs, because when you want to change them, it's less likely that they get stuck and seize in there. So I always put just a really small amount on there, and I've never had a problem. But yeah, if anybody knows different, then please let me know. Also, I need to unscrew this little cap on the end of the spark plug, because the type of ignition leads that I have don't require this. They don't fit. So there's a good tip to remove it before I fit it, because it's really hard to get off once I fit the ones at the back there. So is it in focus? There it is. So as you can see, there's one that's been removed. So it's just a thread like that, and the lead just slips on there and grips the thread. Okay, so this is a little tip. After I just told you that the end of this spark plug needs to be removed, it was just quite hard to get that number 2 spark plug screwed in there, because it goes so deep inside this fan shroud, this tinware. You can barely get your fingertips on the end of the spark plug, so you only have that thread to hold it with and try and tighten it. So I lightly screwed on the end cap again, and then I have my spark plug socket, and as you can see, there's a piece of rubber in there, and that hole there actually fits snugly over that nipple thing on the end of the spark plug, and it actually holds it in there to stop it falling out. So this is a lot easier to hold on to when you screw the spark plug in, and like I said, it should screw in really easily. If you feel any tension in the beginning of screwing it in, it might be misthreaded. So stop, take it out and start again, because you could ruin the thread in the heads, and that's a whole another load of trouble. Okay, and when you pull the socket back off, normally this rubber piece pops off, but all you do is you unscrew the end of that thing, and then it comes off like that, and then you just push it out and put it back in the socket. Maybe one thing I should have done is, if you can see, does it get in focus there? It's hard to see. Okay, as you can see, there's a gap there. That's where the spark arcs across, and you can set that gap depending on the what the workshop manual says the gap should be, and you basically just tap on top of here on the end of it on the table or something like that if the gap is too big, and you can also use a pair of pliers or something and open it up if the gap is too small. Maybe I should have checked it, but I didn't, and this is the last one going in, but normally they are set to specification, because these are the plugs for this engine. So yeah, that's another thing I probably should have done, but I haven't, so hey. Okay, all the plugs are back in now and tightened, and I've put the HT leads back on. As you notice, I have this marked as number 1, so obviously this lead goes to the number 1 spark plug, number 1 cylinder, which is over the back there, the far right hand side. And the firing order, the rotor spins clockwise, so this is the next one, and this goes to 4, and it's actually even written on the mount for the alternator here, the firing order, so it's 1 4 3 2. So it's always good to first of all find out which is the number 1, and you do that by putting the rotating the engine until it's top dead center on the number one, which is what I did when I set the timing on distributor. So that's how I knew that the rotor was pointing at number one when it was at top dead center. So number one, so the next one in line is this one. So that obviously goes to 4, 3, and 2. And it can be a quite common mistake, especially on V8s, because you have 8 leads rather than just 4, that you can get them mixed around. And I think on Jaguars, it spins counterclockwise. So that, again, you have to take into account, obviously. So I've double checked that they're all, the firing order is right, and they go to the right plugs. So I'm going to put the air cleaners back on and then start it up and see if it makes any difference. Okay, let's fire it up. I'll open the door first so I don't get killed by the fumes. Okay, that obviously didn't solve any problems. It's still there. So I think the next step would be is to sell it, buy a Toyota, and live happily ever after. Okay, that's it for today. I was kind of hopeful that the spark plugs would have been the problem, obviously, but it's not. So I'm going to end it here for today because I've got other stuff to do. But yeah, I don't know if we're one step closer, but I don't really know what the next step I'm going to take is. Maybe I'll speak to some friends of mine, see what they say. And then I'll get back to it on Monday after work. Little frustrating, but this is what this hobby is often like. I think the most frustrating thing is that I've been waiting the whole winter to then drive it once the snow goes, and last summer the car drove perfectly. And now the roads are clear, it's developed a problem, but that's the way it goes. So yeah, I'll get back to it. Maybe do a bit of research myself. Like I say, I hope any of this is of any help to anybody. Yeah, I'll get back to it next week. Okay, thank you.